Imagine you wake to the rustle of linen, sandals tapping sun-warmed stone. A soft breeze slips through the wooden shutters. The scent of olive oil and dust lingers in the room. Outside, the streets of Athens begin to stir. A vendor's voice echoes in the distance. Goats shuffle past your doorway. Somewhere nearby, the hum of quiet conversation begins. Questions about the soul, the state, the stars above. But today, you're not a visitor. You're a philosopher, not just a thinker of thoughts, but a citizen of a world where ideas can shape empires or bring them down. Your robe is simple. Your sandals are worn. Your stomach is empty, but your mind, alive. Today, your words might be questioned, applauded, or feared. The marble city awaits you. Its columns reach to the sky, but its power lies not in its stone. It's in the voices that echo between them, voices like yours. In this video, you'll walk through an ordinary day in the life of an ancient philosopher, but there was nothing ordinary about it. You'll face hunger, skepticism, and silence. You'll wrestle with reason. You'll discover why some thinkers were revered and why others were poisoned. There are things about this world we've forgotten, quiet things, strange things. And by the end of this journey, you may see that philosophy was never about sitting on a rock and pondering the stars. It was about surviving the weight of truth in public. So settle in. Welcome to boring history for sleep, where the past drifts by slowly, like smoke from an ancient oil lamp. If you enjoy this quiet walk through time, please like this video and subscribe. There are more forgotten worlds waiting. The stone beneath you is cold, not unpleasant, just present. As your eyes open, light filters through a thin woven curtain. It's early, but Athens has already begun to stir. Somewhere beyond your walls, footsteps echo across narrow alleys, and the faint bleat of a goat drifts through the air. You lie still for a moment, wrapped in a rough woolen cloth that's too short for comfort, but just enough to keep the morning chill from biting your skin. Your fingers find a clay cup at your bedside. Inside, the water is stale, but drinkable, drawn yesterday from the communal cistern at the end of the street. You sip slowly, careful not to spill a drop. There's no luxury here, but there is rhythm. There is order. A philosopher does not need indulgence, only clarity. The room is barely more than 4 walls, a shelf with scrolls, a wooden stool, a worn-out mat stuffed with straw. In the corner, a small oil lamp flickers, left burning low through the night. Its smoke curls lazily into the beams above. You rise. Your back protests, but gently. Your feet touch the stone, rough and dusty. The day begins not with a meal or music, but with thought, always with thought. Your clothes are folded beside your mat, a tunic, off-white, stitched crudely at the hem. It's been worn many times. You slip it on slowly, threading your arms through the coarse linen. No belt today. You won't need it. Your sandals, cracked and softened by years of walking, wait at the threshold. Outside, the first light warms the rooftops. Doves coo in the eaves. Somewhere nearby, a woman hums as she draws water from a jug. The scent of smoke drifts in. The baker is already at work. You feel the hunger rise in your stomach, but you ignore it. Food will come later, after the questions, after the speaking, and the listening, and the long, patient silence between ideas. There's a scroll on the floor where you left it, a fragment of something by Heraclitus. You pick it up, glance at the words. They're familiar, but they always feel new. Everything flows, he said. Nothing stays the same. And today, you'll flow too. Through thoughts, through city streets, through conversations that twist and turn like the alleys outside your door. You reach down and rinse your face with water from a basin. It's cold. Your hands shake slightly, not from fear, from anticipation. The world out there is full of opinions, some loud, some dangerous, some brilliant. You breathe in deeply, filling your lungs with the dry morning air. You don't think about what you'll say today. You don't rehearse. You trust that the words will come when they're needed. A philosopher doesn't chase answers. He welcomes questions. You slip your scroll into a cloth bag, tuck it beneath your arm. Your sandals tap the floor softly as you move to the doorway. The door creaks open. The street greets you. Quiet, but alive. A cat slinks along a wall. A boy runs past, carrying figs in a basket. The light is golden now, bouncing off the limestone walls and turning dust into sparkle. You begin your walk. The Philosopher's Quarter is not grand. It's not marked on a map. But those who live nearby know its rhythm. They recognize the robes. They know the silence of those who pass by, not looking for olives or wine, but for meaning. An old man nods as you pass. You don't know his name, but you know he listens. He sits every day at the same spot by the olive press, carving spoons, and occasionally asking questions. Questions about the soul, about justice, about time. Today, maybe he'll ask again. You take a turn, walking slowly through the uneven streets. No rush. There's no schedule. The Agora will still be there when you arrive. The columns will stand. The students will gather, and the questions will wait, like they always do. The air smells of damp earth and charcoal. You pass by open doors where families stir from sleep. You hear whispers, a child crying, a cough, all part of the city's breath. You step over a puddle, skirt past a mule, nod at a stranger. You're not famous. You're not wealthy, but you are something else, something different. You're one of those who lives inside his head, trying to understand a world that never stops changing. It's not always easy. Some days, people spit at you. Some days, they argue. Some days, they just laugh. But still, you walk. The sun is higher now. Your shadow stretches beside you. Soon, you'll reach the gathering place. You'll sit in shade. You'll cross your legs and speak slowly. Someone will challenge you. Someone will try to trap you in words. You'll welcome it. That's how truth is born. But for now, it's quiet. The philosopher's day begins not with an audience or applause or attention. It begins in stillness, in patience, in a worn tunic, cracked sandals, and the smell of yesterday's smoke. It begins with one step forward, and then another. You step into the morning mist. As you leave your simple room behind, the street is shrouded in soft gray light, and your sandals make muted clicks on the damp limestone. Mist curls around doorways, drapes over rooftops, and softens the edges of the neighborhood. The world is hushed, almost holy, before day breaks fully. In this delicate half hour, footsteps echo twice, and voices are careful not to disturb the silence. You breathe in cool air. It tastes of earth and olive leaves. Each inhale sharpens your mind, and you feel alive. The turns ahead carry the promise of conversation, questions seeking breath, and answers reaching back. The philosopher's quarter begins to stir. Figures, draped in simple robes, cluster beside low walls, stepping with patient intent. You know them. Some have debated until dawn. Some are younger, seeking guidance before the day's weight anchors them. They speak in low tones, their breaths white in the cool air. You nod to a familiar face, someone you argued with yesterday about virtue, his features lined with early morning weariness, yet bright with thought. He returns your nod and weaves toward a stone bench by an open well. Temples stand like guardians along the route. Their columns rise gracefully, pale and damp. Moss softens capitals and water drips from ledges onto carved stone. You pause at a threshold where a small shrine glows with the flame of a tiny oil lamp, a votive left from last night. Passers-by touch the wall, whisper a request, quick and quiet. You do the same without prayer, more out of habit than faith. It's part of the day's structure. Further on, slaves carry clay urns, water for markets, for homes that pay no philosopher's tribute. They pass you in lines, stark contrast to your free steps. You don't look away, only acknowledge their presence. Athens depends on many, yet their faces reveal little, shadowed beneath woolen caps and heavy loads. Next come traders setting out baskets of olives, bread, honey, figs, woven mats. You pass a stall fragrant with warm barley bread. A baker offers a loaf, but you decline. Bread will come later. First, thought. You pause to smell the yeast rising in caramel warmth. Then step on. You hear mockery, soft as fall wind. Two traders snicker as you pass, calling you dusty-robed questioner. You swallow tension, let it pass. Some days, all Athens watches philosophers, not in silent admiration, but with wary curiosity. Today, you accept their gaze. Today, words will prove their value, not talk. You near the outskirts of the Agora. No merchants yet, but the air hums with possible futures. Statues peek from building entrances, and the faint scent of incense drifts from a temple to Apollo. You inhale it, brief and sweet, and carry it across the paving stones. By now, more philosophers have gathered. They form rough circles, leaning against walls, seated on steps. Their faces are lined. Their eyes reflect focus and fatigue. Some laugh quietly as dawn brightens. Some are tense, their brows drawn in thought. Some hold scrolls, grips tight. They recognize your robes as those of a fellow traveler, interior and slow. One greets you with a measured nod. You greet him back. 3 steps later, another pauses to speak. She reminds you of yesterday's dialogue about courage. You offer a quick comment. She smiles. The sparkle is soft and fleeting. Momentary recognition of shared purpose. The mist retreats then. Sunlight wakens. The Agora's open air colonnades come into view ahead, columns curving around benches and fountains. The air fills with new voices, vendors calling prices, early students kneeling by teachers, scribes preparing wax tablets. The philosophers will settle soon. Conversation begins now. Quiet, respectful murmurs. A flock of pigeons circles overhead. Wing beats loud in quiet moments. Someone tosses grain. You watch them scatter, dancing in dust and light. The moment is simple reminder. Even in ambition, nature sees beyond structures, rhetoric, destinies. You enter the Agora's center, sandals now echoing in open space. The slight incline ends, and you breathe deeper, having left private thought for public room. You stand before a columned bench. Students recognize you. They straighten their robes by habit. Some whisper anticipation. You nod. Others watch silently, hands folded, waiting for the signal to begin. Question, commentary, reply. The mist has evaporated. Sun now filters through porticos. Shadows shorten. Morning is fully arrived. Your sandals settle in place. It's your turn to give the day shape. Words will come soon. First, you must catch the rhythm of minds. They will come to you. You will come to them. In a moment, you'll rise and begin. The walk is over. The ideas begin. But each step has been part of the question already. You settle beneath the wide canopy of an ancient plane tree, its trunk cracked with age, its leaves whispering secrets whenever the breeze passes. Nearby, the painted colonnade of the Stoa Poikile stands quiet but firm. Its walls, once bright with scenes of heroes and battles, now glow softly in the morning sun. It is here that you teach, not behind closed doors, but under branches and open skies. This is classroom in Athens, for good reason. Your sandals brush the dust of the earth as you cross your legs, settling into position. Around you, students begin to gather in a loose ring. They find flat stones or sit on woven mats. A few look confident, others tentative. One holds a wax tablet half used, the stub of a stylus protruding like a thinking spur. Another's eyes are shadowed with fatigue. He may have walked far before dawn. Your role begins when they arrive. You rise slightly, a gesture respectful of both students and the teachings of your predecessors. Their voices quiet. Some are eager, questions forming on their lips. Others watch in admiration, hanging on every motion. You feel their gaze, curious, eager, doubtful. One young man speaks first, his voice steady but hopeful. Master, what is the courage of the soul? He presses forward, leaning in, eyes bright. No one else moves. This is how the lesson begins. Without fanfare, without scripts, a question becomes the door. You pause, you inhale. No words yet, just the shared weight of morning air. Then, courage is not the absence of fear. You begin, soft but sure. It is the understanding of something greater than itself. You tilt your head, gaze lifting to the tree's leaves. Tell me then, you ask, what of your mind frightens you? Silence stretches. Some students shift in uncomfortable realization. Fear, they know, might be ignorance. Others exchange looks, eager to share, unsure what bravery you prompt. That's the work, to bend them inward, to ask them to speak, or remain silent if they cannot. Another voice, timid at first, emerges. I fear failure, the student admits, that I will think a path I love, but reach only ruin. You nod. You turn slightly toward stoa poikile. And what is failure but a lesson unheeded? You draw invisible lines through the dust. Study the failures, the flaws. They are maps, not prisons. Behind him, someone smiles. Others scribble quietly. You allow the calm to settle. You do not rush. Teaching without walls means respecting time's own pace. A third student interrupts. A woman, her posture firm. She asks in a low voice, if courage grows from understanding, how do we measure it? How do we know it's true? That question travels through the circle. You look at her, meeting eyes. Not an answer yet, but a mirror. By watching, you say, whether your mind still trembles, and by seeing if you walk anyway. They consider. You breathe. Leaves shift above. Light flickers. This is education, without chalkboards or credentials, only intention, only presence. As the morning progresses, more questions arise. One asks about justice in the courts. Another wonders if the gods care about human ideals. You reply with riddles. What is the balance if not a scale in our own hearts? You ask. And whose story do the gods follow? But what we live. Each reply is an invitation. A student leans forward. A hand touches a wax tablet. Another shifts to speak, but stops. Maybe not ready. That pause is teaching too. You share parables. Nothing written. A fisherman returning home. A man building a tower of stone. Each story lives in the circle, rising when needed, falling silent when answered. Nearby, traders murmur. A goat is tethered mid-path. The city hums. But beneath the tree there is stillness. You carry silence as a living thing. It holds ideas. It holds space for disagreements that arrive unannounced. A reminder that teaching has no schedule. After an hour, the sun climbs higher. Light slants through leaves, dappling faces with golden patterns. A student remarks on it. A metaphor about the mind, sunlight illuminating hidden chambers. Yes, you affirm that metaphor. You let the idea breathe, allowing them to shape it. You guide them gently. You don't lecture. You don't demand memorization. You ask, reflect, encourage. You shift positions. You sip from your clay cup. No luxury, just water. But you don't stop teaching. At some point, a crowd of townsfolk gathers near the stoa's entrance, listening too, without invitation. They do not sit. They observe from edges. Some have come to disagree, others just to watch. That is part of the rhythm. A public lesson is also demonstration. You do not mind. They add richness. By midday, discussion turns to the nature of virtue. You trace a figure in dust. Compare it to a leaf on the tree. Compare both to justice in the city. You remain patient, allowing the group to pull the metaphor apart and reassemble it until it resonates, or until confusion grows into doubt. Doubt is okay. It's learning's partner. A student stands and says, so, to live philosophically is to become like this tree, rooted, silent, yet bearing fruit of ideas? You smile. Perhaps. you say, but also to stand against wind. To survive, we must bend. You draw a line in dust to illustrate. They nod. No one laughs. Instead, they lean in. They stroke their pens across tablets. At times, a thought dies on someone's lips, a question left unasked. But you let that mystery linger. Let them sit with it under the tree. Let it grow roots. Halfway into morning, the crowd outside steps away. The traders and city folk move on. The animals push on. The light alters. The temperature rises. You decide it's time to end. For practical reasons. A conversation is like this tree. It needs presence, air, water, but it also needs rest. You look around. They are quiet. Some tired, some thoughtful, all engaged. Here, we end, you say softly. Not because we have no more to say, but because now you must walk it. You must live it. These ideas will find new soil as you go. They stand. They stretch. They thank you quietly, each in their own voice. They gather scrolls and tablets. Some stay to whisper more. You answer with a calm nod. You rise. Your robe moves in still air. You touch the rough bark of the plane tree. Thank it silently. It sheltered your offering as much as you sheltered their minds. Students drift off, some to debates, some to walks, some to lunch. You watch them go. You sit alone once more. You take up your clay cup. The water tastes of stone and teaching. You sip. A breeze returns. It shakes the leaves again. Another day, another lesson. You remain sitting for a moment, alone, surrounded by the hush of the Agora's edges, sky above, stone below, thought in between. This is teaching without a classroom. No walls, no windows, just the world itself. And it begins again tomorrow. You lean forward as a student raises another question. Master, what is justice? He asks. It seems simple, but each question here carries echoes of all conversations past. You nod, inviting him to continue. He pauses. His gaze drifts to the stoa's marble floor. You watch his chest rise and fall. You wait. You don't answer, yet. After a ripple of stillness, you reply, when is a man just? Your question floats between students, catching on their silence. No one answers immediately. That's the purpose, to let thought stretch. You observe their breath, the way light shifts on their faces. You listen to distant chatter in the Agora. You feel the rhythm of thinking settle in. The student who asked the question now hesitates. Too. Scylla, tall and earnest, offers slowly, a man is just when he acts without causing pain to others. He shrugs, aware of gaps in his own logic. You nod. This is good, you say. Now, what is pain? Who decides its measure? You shift your posture, leaning in under the plane tree's shade. And if someone causes pain for a greater end, is he still just? The students shift. A murmur swells. All speak, all think. A woman says, if the greater end benefits the many, the pain is justified. You raise a finger. Perhaps. But does the end alone define justice? Or is it the means? Another pause. A breeze flutters the leaves. You allow time, one of your greatest tools. Long silence. No rushing. They feel the tension, one by one, answers tumble. Honest law? Compassion? A balance of actions? You nod. You let each thought breathe. You smile quietly as Ariston whispers, maybe the just man asks these questions. Even when answers hurt, you almost speak, but you don't. Silence again, deeper now. They fill it with their own reflections. After a long moment, you speak in calm certainty. We seek better questions, not answers. For each answer births another question. This is the essence of learning here. Students lean forward. They meet each other's eyes, not for agreement, but for engagement. You add another layer. If justice is debated, it grows alive. If answered once, it may grow cold. So, they question, but how will we live with uncertainty? Master, you share a story. A man once asked a river for water. He got what he needed, but every time he came, the river's shape had shifted. The first time solid, the next time deeper, the next lighter. The river taught him, water changes always. Justice is like water, you say. Shape it, and it flows differently each time. They sit quietly, eyes soft. No one jitters. No one reaches for authority. Instead, they let the story settle. Let the metaphor stretch. Another student wonders aloud about knowledge of the gods. You let him speak, then respond. Do our questions bring gods closer or take them farther away? You pause. We don't know, but the question itself calls us upward. Longer silence. Two students begin scribbling. Another simply listens. Later, Ariston returns. So wisdom is knowing how little we know? You smile faintly. Yes, little knowledge. Asked deeply. You watch them breathe. You notice how they lean into uncertainty. No shame, just curiosity. A trader passes, echoes philosopher, but quiet admiration lingers. He senses you work with living thought, not platitudes. By midday, lessons stretch into reflection. Their thoughts swirl. You offer questions, not answers. That's how this school moves. By stretching and bending mind muscles through inquiry. A student asks about courage of action in politics. You ask back, and is courage the same if you act for yourself as when you act for the city? They hesitate. Voices ripple. They discuss. You listen. You let children laugh in distance. Not a disruption, but a reminder that questions mature over time. Lunch comes quietly. You sip water and let them pause. They sit in shade, silent. You hear only breathing and the city's distant pulse. After a moment, they gather again. You ask, what good is knowledge that does not serve? They each speak in turns. No preaching, no dogma, just thought. The lesson moves as wind moves leaves, slowly, organically, unfolding at every pause. You never push. You let questions lead. Toward afternoon, sets of questions branch outward about life, death, fate. Sometimes a student cries, I don't know. You say gently, then you've begun well. Long silence follows. One student folds tears into dust. You offer no comfort but presence. That is itself practice of care and understanding. A final question arises. When do we stop questioning, Master? You stand, walk slowly around the group. You pause under the tree's edge. Light cools. You allow a full breath. Then you say softly, "We never stop. That is why we are alive." They absorb. You wait. No more words are needed. You look down at dust between their feet, at leaves overhead, eyes dimming in shade. A few minutes later, the teaching ends, not with answers, but with readiness to live in question. They rise slowly. Each student looks inward as they gather scrolls. They approach you, one by one, to express thanks, not for answers, but for questions. You nod at each. Their eyes are calm, open, still carrying ripples of early wonder. You remain seated a while longer. The Agora hum fades. The branch of the plane tree sways. You reflect on the beauty of inquiry, that no silence is ever wasted, that no answer is final. That thinking is always an invitation to live more deeply. Students drift to midday tasks, some to lunches of bread or olives, some to baths, some to other lessons. One leaves behind a wax tablet, no words written, but maybe that is enough. Empty space calling for thoughts not yet known. Under the plane tree, you sit quietly, satisfied. The circle is broken but alive. The echoes remain in dust, in tablets, in breaths. Another day awaits tomorrow. Another set of questions. The practice continues, and for now, the world keeps turning, and you remain part of its turning, not because you know all answers, but because you never stop asking. You walk through the Agora at midday, and beneath your breath, the name Socrates lingers, an echo of thunder in quiet skies. You feel the stones beneath your feet remembering. You remember how he stood here, clothed in simple wool, inviting students to speak, questioning Athenian life. You remember the day he drank the poison and fell silent, his questions too dangerous, his words too free. His body may be gone, but his death still shadows the orators and thinkers who dared to follow. Political tension hums in the air. Athens is in the wake of defeat to Sparta. Democracy trembles. Every voice is measured, every phrase weighed. You overhear two generals arguing nearby. One demands stronger defenses. The other pleads for patience with the Persian threat. They speak with urgency, faces aglow with ideologies. You pass, hoping to be unnoticed, but your robes betray you as one of their kind. You lower your gaze, not meekly, but in caution. You are not to be mistaken for a supporter of any faction. You think back to Socrates' trial, how he was charged with impiety and corrupting youth. The same charges could brand a philosopher now. You picture the jurors in the amphitheater, faces stern, speeches sharp. You imagine their voices rising as they condemned him, not for actions, but for ideas. That memory tethers you to caution's edge. A student named Myron approaches. His voice is urgent. "Master, what if we ask about governance, about who should lead and why?" You pause. The question itself is vital. Understanding leadership is part of virtue, but understand first who you speak to. You look toward the towering stoa, where magistrates may overhear even whispers. Power listens. When it hears questions, it wonders what lies behind intent. A merchant, overhearing, glances aside, calculating. He's heard Socrates' name, too. You sense his unease. You continue, voice steady. A question of honesty is fine in private. In public, it can be answer enough. A question of system now matters to the magistrates. You scan the crowd. Soldiers, politicians, slaves, women, all are listening. Silence gathers. Earlier in the morning, you hinted that persuasive rhetoric was like forging steel. It hardens the listener before truth arrives. You meant the students to doubt or confirm before speaking in public. You hoped they'd understand that speaking too boldly could cost them freedom, or worse. You recall a man who composed a tragedy lampooning Athenian leaders. He was exiled. You remember his name, Timon perhaps, stripped of citizenship, stripped of speech. His exile warns you, a bold speech today can become tomorrow's accusation of sedition. Met around midday, the sun presses hardest, and you gather students beneath a pavilion. A student asks, "Should we speak publicly about injustice?" You hold his gaze. "Speak," you say softly, "but measure its weight. Cities are fragile. They tear as easily as strings of a lyre." You tell the story of a baker who complained too loudly about grain prices. He called for revolt. The assembly branded him a demagogue. He was exiled, his stalls burned. No execution this time, but a fate that speaks. Speak with care. The students murmur. Some glance at your robes. One young widow worries aloud. "Should I speak to defend property? My home was taken unfairly." You look at her. "Speak. Yes, but speak not in accusation, but in reasoned appeal. Present facts. Appeal to understanding, not emotion." You recall Socrates again. He did not invent democracy's downfall. He did not lead armies. He asked questions, yet his questions were threats. He was sentenced by jury vote. History remembers his death. Empire remembers its price. You guide your students into practice. Imagine a law tribunal. They frame speeches, but you insist they pause mid-sentence. Lift their gaze to imagine watching eyes. Halt if tone rises too sharply. Some pause, others speak quietly, choosing words carefully. This is new. Tact taught in silence, not loud declarations. Politics reemerges in conversation again as the court's Arrhaean faction stumbles on another debate. A student references Corcyra's democracy spread by Sparta. You frown. That is speculation in public. It drips of alliance. You would suggest, but not present as statement. Suggest, not declare. You feel the weight of every pause harder. Even laughter from traitors could be counted as derision by someone in power. You bring them back to memory. A philosopher before Socrates, Anaxagoras, charged with impiety for suggesting the sun was a hot stone, not a god. His ideas too bold. Athens ordered him to leave. He fled. Then came Socrates. After him, caution was born into thought. Your students sense the stakes. Some shrink back. Others pull scrolls with passages removed. You caution against citing them aloud. Citations are fine, you say, but accelerate risk. Better to rephrase, soften, let the sentence breathe. One student argues quietly, but we need to expose lies. We need bold voices. You nod in approval. And yet, Survival allows continuation. Better to speak over decades than die with a phrase. Behind you, traffic passes, donkeys loaded, merchants haggling. You listen to the clatter and see a citizen adorned with laurel, his cloak lined with medals. He holds no anger today, but tomorrow he might feel threatened by your words. You speak gently. The greatest rebels are heard, not condemned at first, but daring depends on time and place. Know where you stand and where your words land. At midday sun, your students stand. They stretch. Some go back to earnings and obligations. You watch them disperse, their questions unfinished, their caution taught. You walk them to city gates. On the way, conversation continues in quieter tones. They ask about exile, about what happened to those who spoke too freely. You respond. Some were exiled, some excommunicated, some demoted. The city let them live, if they conformed. Only Socrates was forced to poison himself, accused of corrupting youth too broadly. You remember how his student Plato wrote dialogues like shadows, subtle constructions to protect voice. You discuss that strategy. Students lean in, they nod, scribbling notes. A breeze picks up as evening draws near. You pause at the threshold of the Agora, letting questions settle. You feel again that tension between freedom and caution. Athens is generous to a point. Beyond that, it watches, it listens, it remembers. You bid farewell to your students. They bow in gratitude. You smile softly, aware of all that remains unspoken. You watch them fade among the shutters and lamps. You remain, roots and tree, alone again. The Agora empties. Politics and words still hum in memory. You're left carrying Socrates' lesson. Speaking freely is brave. Understanding when to speak is wiser. In Athens, courage is measured not only by words, but by knowing when words may kill or save. You rinse your face in water, night ribbons across sky. In your chest, silence grows. Danger lurks in every syllable. Wisdom and caution now walk together, two sides of the same city coin. In this half-light, you realize it. Wisdom is as much about what you do not say as what you do. Words are seeds, but they can also be bombs. Soon, you'll return home, scroll in bag, mind cautious, but alive. Politicians change, seasons change. Words might save or condemn. That is the cost of thinking too freely. And to survive, you must remember that. You step into the morning haze again, lingering at the threshold of your modest home. Before entering the Agora, you run a hand across the fine dust on your robe, washing away nothing but reminding yourself reputation is not built in silence. It echoes in every gesture. Some days you walk in confidence. Passers-by nod, acknowledging your presence. A baker, kneading dough in the corner, lifts his head when you pass and offers a respectful nod. A student's face lights up when you enter the shade. It's as if they sense conversations to come. These are small affirmations, unnoticed by the world, but meaningful to your sense of purpose. Yet not all reception is warm. You hear whispering voices through shutters or alleyways. The philosopher is lazy, they say. The man sits and meditates while others toil. A merchant snorts when you pass. He plays with words, not with weights or money. Lazy fellow. Their laughter is dry, dismissive. This is your shadow reputation. You carry no purse. You have no manner. Your home is small, your meals modest. But this ought not equal laziness or madness. Yet for some, it does. They see only a man who asks questions instead of building walls, who values inquiry over productivity. To them, you might as well be painted in madness. Still, others admire you. A soldier, a student whom you met at the gymnasium, approaches with bright eyes. Master, your question about courage stayed with me at battle. I was steady because of it. He bows and returns to the patrol. His words warm you, remind you of purpose, but admiration and mockery stand close. They swirl in the Agora like dust kicked up by wind. You learn to walk balanced. There was once a woman, a silk seller, who insisted on your help when her son struggled with school. He needs your word, she said. When he improved, she gifted you bread. It was a simple gift, but spoke volumes. A small act of respect. On the flip side, a potter once sneered, "That man is mad," talking about what the soul will say when we lie down at night. We lie down, and nothing talks back. The potter's words burn with contempt. The same contempt felt for those who ask uncomfortable questions, those who look beneath surfaces. You live modestly by choice, not by necessity. Your shelter is sparse, but your mind is full. You laugh at jokes. You hear in the Agora. You sip water midday, finish your small ration, then walk to teach. There are no complaints. You sleep under a straw mattress. Some say the mattress rattles. Students sometimes laugh when you pause mid-sentence, lost in thought. They wait, then you smile and continue. They call it eccentric. Look at him, they whisper, stumbles over sleep halfway through a sentence. Your forgetfulness at times annoys, but also reminds them you are human. Still, this human flaw, your modesty, your laughs, your absent-minded moments, they are part of your reputation, not grand, not polished, perhaps mad, but real. Uncles and aunts whisper, "He doesn't belong in a man's house. He belongs on a mountaintop, asking birds what they think." Their voices do not rise, but their meaning stands clear. Yet you carry no regret. Your robe may be dusty, your sandals worn, but reputation, true reputation, emerges from integrity. You hold to it. Speak honestly, live honestly, stand by inquiry, even when ridicule nips at your heels. A young student once wrote, "The philosopher dresses in simple cloth, but wears thoughts bright as sun. That praise echoes where mockery cannot reach. On days of doubt, you remember the soldier's eyes. You remember the woman's bread. You remember the boy who scribbled your stories. You remember hearts stirred, even if coin is shallow, even if prosperity is rare. Reputation is not built with gold, but with resonance. By evening, you wander back through the Agora. Lamps light slowly. Stalls close for the night. Crowds thin. A breeze brings the scent of baked bread and warm stone. You lean against a column, pensively. You feel your reputation surrounding you. Some admire, others scorn, some worry for you, but you remain. You sit by the column, pulling scrolls from your bag. You read softly, unaware of onlookers. A passing student pauses to whisper, "I thought you were mad, but after today, maybe curiosity isn't madness." You thank him softly. He smiles, walks away. The lamp turns down behind him. You sit a moment in lingering thought. Reputation may not belong only to your robes, or voice, or home. It belongs to your choice. Live modestly, speak gently, listen deeply, and perhaps that is what truly endures. Not riches, not fame, but minds touched, and hearts that remember. You step into the open courtyard of the gymnasium, just as dawn's first light washes the columns in pale gold. The air is cool, but soon the warmth will fill every courtyard and arch. You've risen early, as always, knowing that to shape ideas, one must also shape the body. In Athens, mind and muscle walk hand in hand. Neither claims victory without the other. Your feet feel the smooth dust of the running track, an oval circling the inner courtyard, worn by years of footfalls. You begin a slow jog, steady pace, listening to the rhythm of breath and heartbeat. Each step kicks up a small puff of pale brown dust. As you move, the world sharpens. The shift of sunlight through stone pillars, the cry of a hawk circling above. You greet a fellow runner with a nod. He returns it in kind. Here, you're not a philosopher lecturing under trees. You're a person in motion, working against gravity and resistance. After a lap, you stop to stretch, arms above your head, then slowly bring them down, feeling a gentle pull along your torso. You breathe in, hold, breathe out. Sunlight touches your skin, warming it. Idea tumbles into thought. How breath and posture mirror the mind. You note that tension in body often betrays tension in mind, and so you loosen both. You move deeper into the courtyard, stopping at the wrestling grounds. Sand fills your bare feet. Already, pairs of young men circle each other, attempting balance and grip. You join a partner, another seeker of body and mind balance. You clench, they hold. You pivot, they resist. Weights of effort and resistance cycle between you. Each move is practiced, deliberate. Greek wrestling is not brute force, it is reasoned effort in motion. Between moves, you pause, sitting in the shallow sand. Your opponent crouches beside you, wiping sweat from his brow. You ask softly, "Why do you train? For battle? For youth?" He thinks. "For excellence," he replies. "Victory is good, but excellence lasts." You nod, closing your eyes to feel the sun on your face. Excellence sounds a lot like virtue. A different word, same journey. You rise again, and the match resumes. Not with noise, but with breath, grappling, shifting, planning one move ahead. You taste effort like salt on lips. Sand coats your ankles. Each time you rise, you breathe. Each time you pause, you reflect. Soon, the sun climbs higher. You lay down your wooden barbell, a pair of stone weights fixed to wood. It's not heavy, but enough to test arms and will. You lift 1, 2, 5 times, and pause, count in even breaths. Muscle grows in repetition. Mind grows in calm focus. A student jogs by, tablet tucked beneath arm, murmuring Plato to himself. He sees you, and joins. You slow your run and talk between strides, discuss virtue, memory, dreams. You note, ideas pass in sweat and sunlight. He nods, slowing, then they part, each carrying the small warmth of shared thought. Water is here, in clay bowls by the pillar. You drink deeply, letting the cold flow down to warm you from within. Behind you, laughter echoes. A group playing discus toss nearby. The sound is bright, free. You watch one woman throw. The disc becomes ancient flash across blue sky and earth. She smiles at its curve. You think there's grace in motion, just as in thought. Another student stops to ask about courage, particularly where courage resides in the body. You brush dust from your tunic and reply, it lives in your chest as the effort to step forward when retreat is easier. He nods and jogs off, returning to discourse later by torchlight. Training ends with more breath. You walk slow circuits around the track, listening to frogs chirping in a nearby cistern. The courtyard falls quiet. Sunlight grows stronger. Sweat has dried on your skin, baking into dust. You inhale slowly, feeling thirst and strength mix. A final exercise. You squat by a low wall, leaning back, hands resting on stone. You lean body, weight, pushing. Again, each rise, each lowering is controlled. Each move practiced until clear. You think, clarity in action begets clarity in thought. Controlled movement births disciplined mind. You finish with a final stretch. Arms reach skyward in silent prayer of muscle and mind united. You marvel at the symmetry of body and stone and sunlight. You leave the wrestling sand, pat feet free of dust. You pick sand from sandals and brush off your robe. You step onto the track again, jogging slowly now. A few quiet feet easing back into the city's rhythm. Before leaving, you stand by discus ground. You consider how far the disc will fly, how far your thought might reach, if twisted and released with care. You place a hand on the cold marble. You feel the steam rising from students, from athletes, from sweat. You think, wisdom is long, but wisdom is also lived in warmth, in effort, in shared breath. You walk out of the gymnasium. The gates close softly behind you. A student carries a scroll. Another runs ahead to his next lesson. The courtyard empties, but the memory of body moving in thought remains. You step into the sun-warmed streets again, mind sharper and limbs steadier. Philosophy is alive in your blood now, not just in your words, but in the sinew beneath. Your path continues, each step carrying both thought and muscle forward, into ideas waiting among colonnades ahead. You arrive at the edge of the Agora, where different groups gather, each cluster shaped by allegiance to a school of thought. Sunlight filters in patches across the stones, illuminating robes in dirtied whites and grays. In the corner, a group of cynics sit upon the ground. They are lean, their features sharp, their eyes bright with challenge. The air around them hums with defiance. Across from them stand stoics, robed in darker cloths, calm, composed, leaning quietly on pillars like trees at rest. The cynics rise with a bark as you approach. It is not angry, but intentional, an oral jab. They care more for truth than for politeness. Why wrap virtue in silence? One asks. Why chain freedom with law? His voice echoes briefly. The Stoics shift, unmoved. A leader among them replies with measured calm. Freedom is rooted in reason. Law mirrors nature's order. The cynic shakes his head. Real freedom, he says, his gaze harsh, needs no ruler's voice. Your footsteps slow, stepping between these two worlds. They have debated here since early morning. Each exchange is sharp but contained, each word another stone on the foundation of their convictions. Near them, the Epicureans sit in a loose circle, drinking diluted wine. They laugh at the fierce intensity around them. Too much tension, one says, voice low. Truth should make the belly light, not the heart heavy. They gesture to their students. One pulls his robe aside to expose chest, symbol of openness, of a life modestly enjoyed, not choked by ascetic rigor. A Stoic overhears and pauses. He steps closer. Pleasure may be fine, he says, but without temperance, it becomes poison. The Epicurean smiles as though diffusing tension. He sips again and replies, temperance, yes, but your poison is denial of pleasure. You feel the tension in the air, like an approaching storm. Words rise, fall. Power lies not in volume, but in conviction. Some of these thinkers have rivalries, older than their own presence. Their voices carry authority, if not always warmth. A young cynic leaps up and paces across the stones. He speaks loudly, each sentence clipped. Poverty is freedom. A roof is consent. Laws are chains. A hush falls across the Stoics. They watch him, but do not answer. He flips a hand, sits abruptly, like a spiked wheel halting from friction. The silence afterward is heavy. You ponder their rivalry. The Stoics pursue calm order. The cynics flinch at every sacred concept. Epicureans smile at both, suggesting a middle path of moderation and contentment. Yet this calm is angered by the others too, as though peaceful living needs defense from those arguing passionately for it. A Stoic teacher steps forward, voice steady but strong. Virtue is sufficient for happiness. Pain can be corrected by reason, the cynics scoff. Happiness built on pain is a ledger for sorrow, they say. A hush glides across spectators. Some lean forward, others flip pages in tablets. The intensity is cerebral but honest. You stand between them, listening. You sense something larger than ideology. Rival schools are like seeds dropped in soil. They grow sharp to block others, but their roots tangle beneath. You remember festival days at the Panathenea, when all thought converged. Then competition felt festive. Now it warbles closer to boundary lines. As midday nears, a politician steps near, a curious observer. He approaches the Stoic teacher. Words pass. You cannot hear, but you sense deference. Some philosophers disdain politics. Others accept patronage. Stoics tend to advise leaders quietly. Cynics reject every throne. Epicureans elude discussion by being agreeable. You watch politics thread through philosophy like a hidden string. Around this, a small crowd of onlookers, citizens, slaves, scribes, await engagement. They gasp when statements are harsh. They laugh when arguments break into metaphor. Their breaths come and go with the cadence of debate, fast when words hit, slow when minds settle. You circle closer to the Epicurean group. They laugh at cynic vitriol, chuckle at stoic compositions. Then a student whispers, "But if either persuades the city, their doctrine may become empire." You nod. That is the stakes beneath rivalry. Ideas shaping lives and empires. In a sudden moment, one cynic bursts forward toward the politician and asks, "What of your own soul, honored man? Are you governed by virtue or by line of office?" The politician flushes, backs away. An aide steps forward, silent and watchful. That moment, but not violence, marks boundaries, boundaries of power, boundaries of thought. You step back. You know too well. Words may not end in blood, but words can exile. One cynic is already under guard from last word. He spoke too loudly near the Acropolis. His friendship with someone on the council worried them, too close to the political mind. So he sits now, watched. The cynic teacher remains calm. He says quietly, "We speak truth anywhere or nowhere." A guard escorts him north as Manuel politics reconvene. A hush follows his passing. That is exile by presence. No trial, just absence. You feel the emptiness in the Agora. The absence is louder than their voices. It lingers in dust, in the sons of the boys who listened yesterday. It warns, speak truth, but not too much. The rivalry falls silent, replaced by murmurs. The Stoics shift back to calm stances. The Epicureans toast silver bowls of wine. A crimson cloak crosses the square. A messenger calling for order as the council convenes. You stand and consider. Rivalry sharpens thought. Debate nourishes ideas. But when the city turns from hearing voices to hearing charges, rivalry can become survival. Student touches your arm. Master, which path is truest? You breathe. You look back across rows of robes and faces turned outward or inward. Without answering, you say softly, "Each path seeks virtue in its own way." But virtue may ask for silence before speech, or even exile before celebration. They look at you. They wait for more. You don't offer further. You teach that real wisdom emerges, not from shouting, but from standing steady when voices fade. The student nods. A breeze crosses the Agora, moving dust. The day shifts from rhetoric to rumble of city laws. Merchants rearrange stalls. Voices rise again, but not in philosophy. You turn, ready to walk away, but you pause. You look back at the painted colonnade of Stoa Poikile. It remains, mute witness to every word spoken, every idea ignited, every conflict cooled. The rivalries shift and renew. You feel the heat passionate words leave, like embers, glowing and fading. You sense that tomorrow they will return. Voices sharper, minds tested. Your own steps are gentle as you retreat toward your simple home. Rivalry will not end today, but awareness has deepened. You carry it with you, not in answers, but in steady quiet. You return home under soft evening light, your every footstep echoing faintly against the stone steps leading to your modest dwelling. Inside, the air is still. A single lamp burns low. You lean against the door frame and take in the scene. A small table, 2 clay cups, a half-emptied flask of wine. Someone, a friend or passing student, left behind this afternoon. You taught courage, discipline, spiritual clarity beneath the stoa poikile. You spoke of virtue like a steady flame. But now, that very wine beckons. Its rich aroma fills the room, reminding you of laughter, of lighter conversation, of rare warmth. You reach for the flask, then hesitate. Tomorrow, you will teach prudence. You will teach restraint. You will teach measured words, sober thoughts. But tonight, the liquid in the clay cup might help settle your mind or ruin it. Your fingers tremble as you set the flask back on the table. You remind yourself, moderation. Virtue is not silence, but harmony. You pour a small sip, not an invitation to indulgence, but a gesture of human balance. The bitter sweetness touches your lips. Your throat warms. You close your eyes, lean back, and for a moment, feel release. The question tugs again. Is this enough moderation, or is it failure? You taught measure. You taught that escaping extremes is the mark of wisdom. But you also taught that humanity is tested by both dryness and plenty, by praise and by scorn. From the doorway, you catch your own reflection, flickering in the lamp's light. You barely recognize the face shaped by long days of teaching, sweat, and discipline. You reach to straighten your robe, brushing a handful of dust from your sleeve. Outside, laughter drifts from a neighbor's courtyard. Guests drinking too much, voices rising. You breathe deeply. You remember your words today, echoing back in your mind. When the soul tastes excess, it wounds itself. Did you fail or heal? A voice knocks softly at the door. A student stands there, offering a stolen grape on a plate. He is worried, uncertain. You invite him in. Together, you speak quietly, not as teacher and pupil, but as two travelers balancing hope and doubt. He asks, Master, do you believe virtue is real when tested? You lower your gaze, pause, then respond quietly. Virtue lives when tested, but even the purest flame must feel breeze to know its strength. He nods, accepts grape. You sip more wine, just enough. You don't smile, but you don't chastise yourself either. Later, alone once more, you light another wick. You open your scroll, begin to write. Your pen moves slowly, words guided by both discipline and regret. You wrestle with lines that balance aspiration and reality. Temptation remains nearby. Wine, praise, comfort. Yet, even now, you step carefully. You live your teaching in tension, and that tension may be the truest measure of your path. Your lamp gutters, shadows lengthen, and you work on, words softly forming against quiet heartbeats. You step into the modest room, where evening light lingers just above the threshold. Inside, a low fire burns in a clay brazier, flickering shadows across the stone walls. The air is warm, but not heavy. The table is simple, a wooden plank resting on clay jars. On it, a bowl of lentils simmered in olive oil, a small platter of figs, and clay cups with water or diluted wine. There's no extravagance, but the scene is inviting. It is always enough. Your students arrive one by one, wiping dust from robes and settling around the low firelight. Hunger and anticipation settle together. Tonight's conversation is set by the food, the light, and the unspoken promise of questions to come. You dip a spoon into the lentils and offer it to the nearest student. He bows his head, accepts the bowl, and murmurs, "Thank you, master." It is a curt, reverent tone, just enough to honor your role without ceremony. Others follow, passing the food quietly, lifting cups of water. You begin. Tonight, we think about home and hearth, how relationships shape virtue. You lift your clay cup and take a slow sip, feeling the cool water meet dry throat. What is friendship? And how do we maintain it when our minds diverge? An eager student, Chiron, lifts a fig. He breaks it in half and passes one piece. Aristotle wrote about philia, love that binds people through shared values. He begins, quoting from memory. A pause. Is that enough to hold friendship in turbulent times? Another student, Lydia, rolls her eyes. What use is philosophy if it does not warm the heart now? If we debate while people starve or soldiers march, what is the value? You listen. You reach for a handful of figs and tear them apart slowly. It's not enough to think, you say softly. It is in candle-lit rooms like this that philosophies are tested, held close, defended, questioned. The students nod. They settle into the warmth, like vines around a trellis. Conversation picks up. One student asks, "Can a friend disagree and still hold value? Does disagreement destroy trust?" You lean forward, firelight dancing on your face. Disagreement, when done with respect, refines trust. It chisels away false assumptions. If trust ends with honest difference, it was never firm. The fire crackles. You pass the lentils around again. Someone scoffs, lightly. Maybe, but there are friendships broken by political rivalry. The student, Marcus, mentions a man who lost friendship after defending Socrates. You nod. The air tightens with acknowledgement. You respond. Then we ask, whose side is virtue on? And if we cannot discern, whose choice to make? You pass figs slowly, letting their sweetness underscore your words. You encourage another student to speak. They mention how after the Peloponnesian War, some friendships collapsed over loyalty to Sparta. You note the parallel with personal virtue. You talk about the fire itself, how it needs air and fuel to burn clean. A soft breeze drifts in through a window. You remark, friendship, like fire, needs balance. Too much fuel, pride, and it flares. Too little, silence, and it dies. Another voice, quiet, asks about joy. Does friendship's purpose include pleasure, or is it only growth? You pass water and reply, Aristotle's first category of philia is utility. Second is pleasure. Third is virtue. All valid, but only the last sustains through hardship, loss, and death. Silence follows as they digest that. Firelight hovers on their faces, carving lines into robes and scrolls. You invite them to share personal examples. A woman speaks. Her closest friend married into political turmoil. Their bond changed. We could still love, she says, but distance came between us. Someone nods. You respond. That is the test. Love becomes habit, or loyalty becomes emptiness if grounded in convenience. The brazier dims. You drop a few more sticks into the flames. Sparks rise. You ask the room, does virtue require sacrifice? Must friends pay to preserve friendship? It's a question heavy with complexity. A student takes a spoonful of lentils and considers. I think so, he says. If virtue means being honest, even when it hurts. He shrugs quietly, as though unsure of being thought unkind. Lydia stands. She looks at the food. What about when food is gone? When the table is empty? What holds us then? You pause, letting the image settle. Then our friendship is measured not by presence, but by memory, hope, and purpose. We become each other's promise. Firelight flickers. Tangled ideas hang in the air with warmth. You pass not just food, but voices, sparks of thought, small curiosities. One student quotes Plato's Symposium, a speech about love that orders the soul. Another scoffs at Platonic ideals. What use is love without action? Words without deeds? A mild argument begins. No anger, just the usual tension of ideas. A sparring made of respect. You intervene gently. They are both right. Words stir the soul. Action refines it. We need both. Someone yawns. Long day. Full mind. You smile. You look around at lit faces and dim walls. The brazier grows small embers. Lentils are gone. A few figs remain. Cups are nearly empty. You bring discussion to close. Remember, friendship is a virtue because it requires constant nurturing. It thrives in conversation and honesty. And yes, even in disagreement, you rise slowly, brushing dust from robe. You join them in clearing the table. They stand, make farewells. Some ask quietly if tomorrow's lesson might be on justice, or perhaps courage again. You nod. Direction draws from restless minds. Firelight fades further. Embers weaken. You remain to sweep the floor, to put out the fire. You fill the clay, cups with fresh water, and set them aside for morning. Scrolls are rolled and tucked away neatly. As you step outside, night is cooler. The Agora's lamplight casts gentle halos. Students scurry home. A dog barks in the distance. The world is quiet, awaiting tomorrow's sunrise and the next question. You pause under the olive tree outside your door. You close your eyes. You taste lentils, figs, friendship, and ideas. The warmth of fire lingers in your chest. You realize tonight was not just food and talk. It was living virtue in shared light. Slowly, you turn and exit into night. Under the glow of dawn's first light, you return to your modest study, a quiet room with a simple wooden table. By the window, a clay lamp flickers gently, dust particles drifting faintly. You brew a thin tea from barley husks, letting steam curl in the still air. Across the table lies a fresh sheet of papyrus and a small pile of charcoal. Today's work begins now, capturing thoughts before they vanish. You uncurl a reed pen, its tip sharp and brittle. You take a breath and stroke a single character onto the papyrus. An assertion, a question. Upright lines, followed by graceful curves. Already, the weight of permanence settles in your palm. You pause. Writing is not spoken word. It endures. Will this idea outlast your sandals? Your mind drifts to Socrates, who never penned his own dialogues. Did he fear writing would distort meaning? You glance at the first lines. What is virtue? You read them aloud. Gentle, hesitant. Already, the pen scratches anew. You revise. Ink smudges. You set it aside. Outside, the city stirs. You hear mule hooves, a baker's shout, the clatter of traders setting up. But here, time moves slower. Thoughts collect like dew, glistening in early rays. Writing is slow excavation. Dig until the idea reveals itself. You copy a favorite verse from Parmenides. Being is unchanging. The forms on papyrus shimmer with meaning. You trace each stroke again. You lean back. Imagine the ancient marveling at unity of existence. You scribble notes in margins. How do we bind change to permanence? Already, new questions form. A student arrives, clay cup in hand, silent. He stands just past your desk, watching your strokes. You don't look up immediately. You don't break rhythm. He waits. Finally, you close the pen and set it down. He bows softly. You nod. He unfolds his own papyrus. The corners are frayed. He asks about accuracy. Did you intend permanence or invitation? You hold your gaze steady. Both. The pen is bridge and boundary. He nods, absorbing. He leaves, and you return to writing. Perhaps a dialogue, echoing yesterday's dinner. Exchange between two friends arguing virtue, memory, and hope. You sketch one character, a veteran returning from war, the other, a young scholar. Dialogue flows, questions, gentle rebuttals, long silences between words. You write deliberately, uncertain if it will be shared or forgotten. Mid-morning arrives. You pause, wet cloth dabbed across scroll, drawing out stray charcoal. You consider how many philosophers before you tried and failed to be heard across time. You sense presence of hermeneutics. Future readers will wonder what you meant. Are you a historian or poet disguised as philosopher? You shift topics. You begin a treatise on memory. How thought imprints itself in mind and page. How writing is, itself, an act of remembering or forgetting. You write. To write is to revisit, to fold back into mind the edges of fleeting thought. You pause again. You sip tea. Smoke drifts upward. A breeze enters through open shutters. You glance at the streets beyond. A senator's wife passes by, carrying a basket of olives. You picture her skimming your lines, eyes hungrily scanning questions of virtue. Would she see herself or another? You smile faintly. That's hope of writing. Afternoon sunlight warms the papyrus. You lean forward and continue. Dialogue grows, darker. One speaker fears their own contradictions. You draft a line. When we claim virtue, we betray ignorance. That feels right. You write it out once, twice. You consider setting it aside, but you leave both versions. Homemade differences preserved. You suddenly shift focus. A poem. You remember a local healer who offered free remedies. You write verse. Hands warmed by root and leaf. Healing is more than cure. It is trust. The rhythm is clumsy on first line. You rewrite. You try again. It improves. You smile. Evening nears. Sun falls low. You look at the collection on your table. Dialogues, poems, marginal notes. Some pages are empty. The morning left blank spots. But that too is record. That too counts. Writing is not always fullness. Sometimes it's witness to gaps, to silences. You roll scrolls, secure them with leather thongs. You label them with short titles, on memory, dialogues of self, verse for the healer. You tuck them into stacked crates. You breathe deep. A final thought crosses your mind. Will any of this endure after Athens changes hands? Time dilutes names. The Agora empties. You touch the scroll. You feel its fragility and resilience. Words may fade, wax tablets broken, but paper holds hope. You stand, lamp in hand, and step outside. The evening air brings chatter. You carry the scrolls home. You think, written words may outlive sandals, but also bind the living, yourself, now captive to memory and thought. Tonight, before sleep, you will unroll a scroll and read a few lines. You will imagine someone long after, curious, facing tomorrow. You will realize writing is both record and invitation. Record of who you were, invitation to who may follow. And so the day of writing, scratching, folding, longing, comes to a quiet close, with words anchored in papyrus, waiting for the future's quiet reader. You settle at a low wooden table beneath the open window of your study, the city's rhythms drifting in through the shutters. Evening light filters across your desk, illuminating the smooth surface of a wax tablet. Its surface gleams, a fresh canvas for thought. You press the tip of a reed stylus into the soft wax and begin to write. The scratches appear briskly, letters forming into words, thoughts carved into silence. On the left tablet, you copy a fragment of yesterday's dialogue under the tree. Phrases about courage, laughter between students, the question about virtue and memory. On the right, you start a new line. What remains when the speaker is gone? The stylus etches across wax, soft lines that catch the light and fade back into gray. You pause, run your fingertip over the words, feeling their grooves. Around you, scrolls rest quietly. Some are full, others half written. Soon, they'll be folded, rolled, passed to a messenger, or tucked away into a crate. But the wax tablet sits here, temporary, tactile. You imagine someone tomorrow, or years from now, turning the tablet, reading, scratching an answer, recording a counter question. You refer to scribblings. Memory is a river. Words are bridges. Does a bridge last if the river shifts? You consider how words might fade. Lost to fire, theft, toothpaste of time. You press harder, darkening lines, remembering that writing is preserving, but also weighting the mind with permanence you cannot entirely claim. A student enters quietly with a candle. You bless the light and continue. He stands behind you, watching your focus. After a moment, he asks softly, "Will this endure?" You pause, reflect. "That depends on those who come after." You reply, "If they value these lines, if they copy them, if they read them." He picks up the stylus, experiments with a flourish. Wax gives way, then reforms. In the melting is transformation. You ask him, what is more lasting? The spoken word carried in memory, or the written word carried on tablets? He answers slowly, memory lives in hearts. Tablets live in hands. You nod. This complexity echoes the city's divisions, voices echoing down marble columns, lines hovering like ghosts in the light. You shift to a new tablet and trace the names of thinkers. Parmenides, Heraclitus. You leave spaces after each name. You wonder how many of their words remain only because someone copied them by hand centuries ago. Countless others were lost. Names dusted from tablets rotting in heat. And names of the band? You think of Anaxagoras, thrown out for his solar theory, whose fragments survive only in someone else's commentary. Outside the window, the moon rises. It casts a pale glow over your writing. You think of philosophers long dead and buried. Will your words join them? Will they matter? Or will they drift like dust in the Parthenon's shadow when tourists come, centuries later, holding scrolls that cannot open? A breeze stirs a loose page. Flipping it, you chase it gently and weigh it on wax. You scratch the question, is forgetting the greatest loss or the final mercy? The stylus mutters across the wax as if uncertain itself. Dust drifts in from the city. Each breath you take might bring soot that lands on your words. You lightly brush your breath across the tablet, smoothing it, preserving written marks as prayer. You remember that script does not guarantee survival. It only offers chance. You take a moment, dip a rag in cool water, and wipe the wax clean. The surface becomes blank, receptive again. You hold it close and wonder, if tomorrow this tablet is wiped, will today's lines matter? Only in your mind, only in the slight tingle of thought that fluttered there. You copy anew, a condemnation of lovers. They write poems on wax, believing love will carve itself deeper than eternity. You tuck away irony. Love is itself ephemeral. Memory dance on wax. Sometimes you think writing into wax might be gentler than scraping into stone, or harsher. Your hand begins to cramp. You switch tablets, let them cool on the stand. You reach for a clay tablet instead, scribbled in charcoal. These last longer, resistant to heat, but bulkier to copy. You press the pen, scratch out a lesson, let memory guide and writing preserve. You hesitate before inscribing a dot, thinking each stroke counts. One tablet fills. You stack it with the others. You turn to the next, but your mind drifts. Your breath catches on a phrase you wrote. We are dust shaped into thought. You whisper it beneath your breath, and suddenly the sky beyond glows in softer moonlight. The city sleeps. The city remembers. But does it know you? You dip the stylus in hot wax and melt a burnished surface, flat, ready for the next stroke. You glance at your hourly scroll of dough, your only food today. You realize writing has cost time, hunger, sleep, yet it has given clarity. Each word you lay in wax warms your thought. You set pen aside. You sit back, reading lines written hours ago. The phrase about forgiveness, about fear of failure, it still rings clear. That is a small victory, a voice preserved long enough to speak beyond your lifetime. Whispers of wind close shutters. A final candle gutter. You roll tablets into leather wraps. You stack them on a shelf. You sit a moment in darkness, the knowledge of time pressing softly. Then you light the lamp again. You write only 2 words on a fresh tablet. Will it? And you dot a question mark. Then you stop. You step from the streets of Athens into your quiet room, elbowing the door closed behind you. The moon peers through a narrow window, its silver light spilling across the floor like a gentle promise. Outside, the city's life softens. Vendors have disappeared. Sandals no longer echo over stone, and even the temple fires seem to dim. You turn and release a breath you didn't know you held. Your room is modest, the kind of shelter that feels permanent only because it's carried all your days. A single candle flickers on the wooden table, the flame low and slow. It trembles slightly, jumping to the next breath of air, as though mirroring the stirring thoughts in your mind. You stand still, letting the moon fill your eyes, listening to silence that is not empty, but full of memory. You cross the floor and settle in the wooden chair beside your table. The cane legs creak softly, as though greeting your return. You lean forward, chin resting on joined hands, elbows on the table. Beyond scattered scrolls, wax tablets, opening parchments, your own breath is the loudest thing in the room. Sometimes it feels as though you are both the question and the answer, locked in dialogue with yourself. You glance at a fragment pinned under a clay bowl, a line you wrote in the morning, half lost in ink. What is truth? You trace the letters with your fingertip until they blur with candle wax. Then your eyes drift to another fragment behind it. What is good? Neither question has keyboard, clasped in hope that someone will deliver a neat response. Tonight, they float unraveled before you. You lean back and close your eyes. Thinkers before you have tried to define truth with laws, with letters, with pure logic and pure poetry. None found endings. Each only invited more wonder. You wonder, is truth something that stands independent of us, like cold stones in the Acropolis? Or is it made through questions asked by someone like you? Under a lamp, your fingers brush the edge of a scroll. Dialogues you wrote earlier. You remember the voices through them. The child asking, the widow hoping, the student earnestly challenging. You wonder, did you guide them toward truth, or only toward better ways of not knowing? A low chill breathes through the cracks of the walls. You rise and draw your cloak tighter around you. You walk slowly toward the window, just to feel the cool touch of night on your face. The moon above watches quietly, witness to everything. You stay there, silent, for a moment, letting the light press its questions across your chest. When you return to the table, another thought stirs. Goodness, it's not simpler than truth. You taught temperance today, restraint, moral substance. But you also heard ambition in voices, dependence on applause in thoughts, the hunger for praise under philosophic pretexts. How do you define good when your own candle glows small and your boat of ideas drifts on deep, quiet water? You need the rim of your clay cup, the same cup you used for water earlier, now empty. You remember your teaching under the plane tree, the wrestling in the gym, the shared lentils by firelight. Each lesson held hope and failure in equal part. Perhaps goodness is less an answer than a practice, a step toward quiet, toward courage, toward shared light in darkness. A breeze lifts the candle flame, and shadows warp. You steady its base, careful not to let darkness seize it. You reflect on leaders who came before you. Some praised, some feared. Their truths shaped cities. Their faults caused ruin. You wonder, can truth be measured in whispers rather than decrees? Can goodness be formed in small acts? The lending of scroll, the shared eye line with a student, the acknowledgement of struggle. You sit once more, candle between fingers. You consider every question you faced today, every slip and every spark of clarity. Philosophy often demands certainty, but tonight you're satisfied with the ache of not knowing. The tension between thought and unthought may be where truth breathes, where goodness lives. You wait under the moon, in quiet twilight. Thoughts rise and fall like tides within your chest. You watch the candle flicker, imagine flickers of thought reaching beyond night. There is no answer tonight. There is only wondering, and for a moment, that feels enough. The candle has burned low now. Outside, Athens is still. Only the cicadas hum in the distance, as if whispering to the stars. You've spent a full day thinking, listening, teaching, questioning, and now, here in the silence, the questions remain. But that was always the point. Being a philosopher in ancient Athens was never about having all the answers. It was about learning to live in the questions, to accept discomfort, to resist the pull of easy truths. It was about holding paradox in both hands and still managing to walk forward, even if no one followed. You weren't powerful. You didn't live in marble halls or dine with kings. You weren't rich, and your clothes never caught the eye. But your thoughts, your strange, stubborn thoughts, just might outlast the stones beneath your feet. You see, to think deeply in a world of noise, to ask questions in a city of certainty, to challenge your own beliefs day after day, that was its own kind of bravery, the kind no soldier could carry, the kind no statue could ever fully honor. Every morning you woke, not to comfort or applause, but to the quiet burden of thought. You debated with those who challenged you. You ate simply, dressed plainly, walked long dusty roads. You risked ridicule, sometimes exile, sometimes worse, all because something in you believed that truth, whatever it was worth chasing. And now the night wraps around you. Your candle flickers once more and goes out, leaving only the soft glow of stars above. You feel small beneath them, but somehow not insignificant, because even now, after centuries have passed, your voice echoes in forgotten scrolls, in dusty books, in classrooms and quiet minds around the world. Maybe even here, in this moment, in this video, someone listened. Thank you for walking this path tonight, through marble columns and whispered arguments, through ink and silence, through ideas both ancient and eternal. If this journey into the mind of the ancients moved you, even gently, please like this video. It tells the algorithm that quiet stories still matter, and if you haven't already, subscribe to Boring History for sleep. where strange, dreamy pasts return night after night. Rest well, philosopher. The questions will wait for you in the morning.